All right, let's talk about Nietzsche. Specifically, let's talk about his hammer. We're going to grab that famous philosophical tool today and use it to smash one of the biggest psychological mistakes he ever wrote about. It's an error that, honestly, creates these dark shadows in our minds and saddles us with guilt that we have no business feeling.
You know that feeling, right? That, I don't know, that low level hum of anxiety in the background, a vague sense that you've messed up or that something's just not right. You rack your brain trying to figure out what you did, what mistake you made, but you come up empty. And still, the feeling just lingers, like this shadow you just can't shake.
Well, here's the twist. According to Nietzsche, that feeling isn't the result of some crime you committed. It is the crime scene. It's ground zero for a huge psychological mistake we all make. It's like we become detectives trying to solve the mystery of our own bad feelings, but we almost always end up pointing the finger at the wrong culprit.
So, how does this actually happen? Well, Nietzsche says our minds work in this really weird, backwards way whenever we feel uncomfortable. It's a kind of psychological projection. We basically hallucinate reasons for why we feel the way we do. We're literally inventing shadows and then getting scared of them.
He actually has a name for this: shadow causality. Think of it like this. Your intellect, which is always trying to protect your ego, can't handle the raw, simple truth coming from your body. So it invents a story, a plausible but totally fake cause. It creates this whole shadow narrative to explain a very real physical sensation. Because, let's face it, our minds love a good story. And the truth, like, I'm just tired, is often too boring for us. And this just turns our whole idea of cause and effect completely on its head. We usually think, okay, something bad happens, then I feel bad, right? Nietzsche says, nope, it's the other way around. First, your body feels something, a knot in your stomach, a tightness in your chest. Then your mind, totally freaked out by this mysterious feeling, starts scrambling for an explanation. And finally, it grabs the first plausible thing it can find. Oh, it must be that email I have to send, and pretends that was the cause all along.
So the cause is literally an invention that comes after the feeling. You feel anxious, and then your brain goes, it's definitely that deadline next week. The feeling was real, but the reason? It's a ghost, a hallucination we cooked up to make ourselves feel better. And just like that, we're trapped in a prison made of our own made-up stories.
Okay, so maybe this all sounds kind of harmless, like a weird mental quirk. But Nietzsche warns us, no, this has some really dark and dangerous consequences. This is the exact point where a simple physical feeling gets twisted into a heavy, crushing moral burden. It casts a long, long shadow over everything. Because when that unexplained feeling is something like suffering or just bad luck, what kind of cause does our mind invent? A moral one. All of a sudden, that vague unease isn't just a physical sensation anymore. Oh no. Now it's evidence that you did something wrong. It feels like a punishment. And that right there is the birth of guilt. We literally become our own judge, jury, and executioner for a crime we never even committed.
And this is where Nietzsche really goes for it. This is a huge, radical idea. He's suggesting that entire religious and moral systems might be built on this one psychological mistake, the feeling of a bad conscience, that internal physical pressure that came first. And the whole concept of sin, he argues it was just invented later to give that nasty feeling a name, a reason, and of course, a way to control people.
Look at this. It's so simple when you break it down. On one side, you have the biological truth. I am ill. Maybe I'm just tired or my stomach hurts. Simple. But on the other side, you have the imaginary cause we invent. I am guilty. See what we did there? We took a simple physical problem and piled this massive metaphysical weight on top of it. We turned a fact about our body into a judgment against our soul.
All right, so if our brains are basically haunted houses, constantly creating these phantom causes for everything, how in the world do we break free? Well, this is where the detective shows up. Nietzsche arrives on the scene with his famous hammer, and he is ready to find out what's really going on.
But hold on. Why do we even do this to ourselves in the first place? The answer is simple: fear. We are terrified of the unknown. We can't stand uncertainty or randomness. Honestly, we'd rather believe we're being punished for something specific than have to accept that sometimes suffering just happens for no reason at all. See, even a bad reason gives us a weird sense of control. But no reason? That leaves us staring into the void of a random, indifferent universe. And that's terrifying.
And that's why Nietzsche brings out his hammer. But don't think of it like a sledgehammer for smashing things. It's more like a doctor's reflex hammer or a tuning fork.
He uses it to gently tap on our most precious beliefs, what he calls our idols, just to see if they ring true or if they're hollow. He taps on the big ones, like sin and guilt, and listens for that hollow sound of an empty, made-up cause. And this is the big aha moment. What does he find when he taps on these idols? It's not some deep, dark secret of the soul, it's biology. He finds that all that profound moral suffering we call sin or guilt is often just poor digestion or nerve exhaustion, or maybe you just ate something that didn't agree with you. He's trying to get us to stop analyzing our shadows and start paying attention to our bodies.
So what does that mean for us? It means if you really want to understand why you feel a certain way, don't start by putting yourself on trial. Start with a physical checkup. Nietzsche is practically begging us to look at the real, tangible things. What's your diet like? What's the weather? How's your metabolism? Where are you living? These, he says, are the real reasons for our moods. This is the stuff that our consciousness is actually built on. And smashing these idols isn't just about tearing things down. It's incredibly liberating. It's about clearing the ground to build something new. It opens the door to what Nietzsche calls the great health, a state where we're finally in charge of our own reality, no longer slaves to the fictions we make up about ourselves. So what is this great health? It's basically a state of radical self-acceptance. It's when you can feel something, even something painful, and just let it be. You can just say, okay, I am feeling this, without needing to invent a whole story or a grand purpose for it. You accept the sensation as a biological fact, not a moral report card. It's the kind of clarity you get when you finally turn on the lights and realize the shadows were never really there. And that leads to this massive shift in how you see everything. You stop asking that passive, victim-style question, why me? Why is this happening to me? Because that question just keeps you stuck, chasing ghosts. Instead, you start asking a much more powerful, active question. Okay, this is happening. Now, how can I use it? How can this make me stronger? You're no longer looking for a why. And once you make that shift, you're free. You've literally stepped out of that psychological shadow world. All those ghosts of guilt and punishment, they just evaporate. They lose all their power over you because you see them for what they are. Made-up stories, for real but totally manageable physical feelings. You're finally in charge of your own present moment, free from all those lies your brain was telling you.
So what's the bottom line here? What's the big takeaway? It's really about a choice. You can live a life reacting to these internal shadows you've created, or you can step out into the sunlight. You can live a life of action, of self-creation, a life based on what's actually, physically real. What Nietzsche is telling us is that real courage, real intellectual honesty, isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the strength to face the world without all the answers. It's about being able to stand there, in front of the vast, random, often causeless nature of life, and not flinch, not needing to make up a comforting story just to feel safe. And when you can do that, when you let that idol of imaginary causes crumble, the transformation is incredible. You stop being a passive interpreter of your own pain, always trying to figure out why. Instead, you become an architect of your own power. You take the raw materials of your life, including the pain, and you start building something strong, something new, something that is truly yours.
So the final question isn't for some long-dead philosopher. It's for you, right now. The next time you get that vague, unsettling feeling, what are you going to do? Are you going to run back into that familiar shadow world and invent a reason to feel guilty? Or are you going to pick up that hammer, take a look at your biology, and just stand in the simple, powerful truth of your own existence? What shadows are you ready to step out of?